My name is Jade, owner and principal planner of Joyful Events by Jade, and this is The Cookie Table. This is a podcast all about love, marriage, relationships, and the wedding industry, wedding news. Perfect for anyone that is getting married, is married, a wedding vendor, or someone that just loves weddings. Grab your favorite cookie from The Cookie Table, pour yourself a glass of Chardonnay, and let's get into it. Welcome to The Cookie Table. This is my first solo episode. Felt like it was appropriate to do at some point. Appreciate you listening and following along. It seriously means so much. So I wanted to take this week to kind of talk about how I got started in weddings, why I'm here now, but mainly why I left commercial radio. So anyone that knows me, knows I used to be on a local morning radio show. It was really fun. It was one of the better years of my life. But I always said I loved what I did from 5 to 10 a.m. and everything else outside of it was pretty shitty. So I want to get into that. So anyone that used to listen, I love you. I appreciate you. I know we're still Facebook friends. It's been a long time, but it's been years. We're still friends with several of you, but it's a bummer. It's a bummer because my dream job was to be on the radio. I'm grateful I landed that at 23 years old. But it just kind of all went to shit. It all went to shit. So let's get into that. Let's get into it. While I take a sip of my wine. So I was 19 years old when I went to radio. I was very grateful I met somebody that knew somebody at the local radio company. Bigger station, by the way. I'm going to keep names and everything out of this. I was in college and I needed an internship. When I was in college, I was a general manager of my college radio station. So my goal was to get into radio. I loved it, wanted to be a part of it. So met someone that was like, hey, I can kind of help you get an application in if you'd like that. I said, that would be great. She's only picking one intern. She picks one intern every summer. And I was very, very grateful that I ended up being that intern. So I worked in promotions. I was a promotional intern to start at 19 years old. And my very first day on the job, the mayor was in the studio and I had to help he was running something like this. They used to have a really cool, well, they do have a big studio where sometimes they would pre-record kind of video, audio type thing. So the mayor was there and we kind of just right away started doing our thing. So I helped her with a lot of the bigger radio events. So for example, when Kenny Chesney would come to Heinz Field and that really big block party on Art Rooney Avenue, that's what I would help her with. Obviously it's Anchorshire Stadium now, but it was Heinz Field when I worked in radio. So I started as a promotional intern and then I was a promotions assistant. So same thing. Anytime there was a little tent and the radio station was there doing a little giveaway, I did that. I made so many fantastic friends along the way. I had so much fun doing it. Got you out, got you talking to people. It had you in the space. The radio industry is a very interesting place. I feel like you have to be a special person to be a part of it. You have to be different. It honest to God shaped me. I mean, I started, again, 19 years old. One of my first days on the job too, I walked into a studio and some of the most vulgar things were said to me as an intern off air. Funny vulgar. Let me just say that. And it kind of like gave you this, whoa, what the hell? Where am I? What kind of workplace is this? Swearing up a storm, saying really crazy things, but it was all funny. Like everyone was just having a good time and that was the vibe. And I was like, I like it here. I feel like this is kind of the place I need to work. I can really get used to this. So all low-key degenerates, all low-key love having a good time. Honestly, high-key having a good time. Any event that there was, we all had a pretty good time. So started doing that, was in promotions, and then I started working to get on the air as a part-time person. So I would go in the studio, I would practice, I would have my boss give me an air check is what they'd call it. So he critiqued me. He helped me. He was really, really supportive. He's like, I think you could go really far in this. I think you're great. You're learning really well. And he then started to put me part-time on the actual air. So I bounced between stations and I would do weekend work. So anyone that you would hear from 9 to 2 on a Saturday on the radio, that was me for a while. And then I would start filling in for some of the bigger on-air talents. So I would be on during the week when they were on vacation or someone was sick. They would call me in, hey, can you cover so-and-so's shift? So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was grateful. I met my husband right before I kind of started to do the on-air part. Who you surround yourself with is such a big thing. I will preach that until the end of time. My ex-boyfriend, when I first got into radio, and when I told him I wanted to be on air, he said, well, you already have a job. Why do you need a second job? And I was like, okay, that's a little unsupportive and rude, but sure, I won't do it. I met my now husband, Jason, 8 years ago, and I told him, I really wish I could try to be on the radio. Like, I don't know why I'm bummed that I didn't kind of go for that. He goes, well, why can't you? That was his immediate response. So I had my ex saying, why do you need 2 jobs? And then I have my now husband saying, why can't you be on the radio? That's what you want to do. Go do it. So very, very grateful for that support, because if I didn't have him and if I would have stayed with my ex, honest to God, I probably never would have even had the experience I had. So thank you, Jason. You know, I'm super, super grateful for all of your love and support through all of these years of doing things that I do, just like you're supporting me doing this podcast. So when I got on the air and was doing all the part-time work, a morning show position opened up. I was 22 at the time when I started to audition. There are several things that people don't know about radio. It's very political. I had a very supportive boss who liked me for years, turned to didn't really think I should basically get the job I ended up getting. And I'll get into that. I watched other part-time talents that I worked beside try out for full-time gigs 5 times over and get continuously told no. So at that point, it's not you. It's not what you're doing. It's the political environment as to why that person will never give you a full-time job. That isn't any business. That isn't any career. If you are getting the runaround for a promotion or whatever the case is, a different job in that industry, or being told that now's not the right time, leave. Please leave. I said, when I saw my colleague at the time going through that, I said that multiple times, it's just not going to happen for you here. Like, it's not going to happen. So that kind of gives you an idea of a little bit of the political environment we had to deal with. I tried out for months for this morning show. Busted my ass, did everything we could with somebody else. After auditioning, literally, I think it was 6 months, putting all this work into things, we were told, hey, you're doing really great, but we're bringing someone from a different city in. Cool. Okay. That gentleman comes in. Now we're all required to start auditioning again for that person's co-host. That took several more months, more auditioning, time on the air with him, and he had partial say into who he wanted to be his co-host, but this is where things started to get shitty. Again, busted my ass for months already. Busted it even more once he came in, and he kept telling me, my co-host, Jade, I think you're great. I want it to be you. I want you to be the co-host, but boss doesn't want it to be you. I said, well, how does that make any sense? I have to work with you every day. Our chemistry is what matters the most. So what do I do here? He's like, I'm going to keep pushing for you. I want it to be you. I think we have something really great going on, and I'll see what happens. Sure enough, my boss wanted it to be someone else because he was obsessed with the idea of her style, of what she was into. He thought it fit the station more. He didn't think I had the right, style. I wasn't country enough. Okay, that was basically what I kept getting. He apparently offers her the job, and she was like, well, can I do this in my other job? Because she was in audio, and he got pissed and said no. So then I get a call. To, hey, I want to offer you the position as a co-host. Super cool. I verbally accepted. I go into the station to sign my paperwork. I get offered. Sit down for this one, because you're not going to believe it. And I know this was a little bit of time ago, but even in, early 2018, 2017, no one should have been making this living wage. I got offered $12 an hour. I got offered $12 an hour to co-host a large market radio show. Morning show. Again, I verbally accepted on the phone, sure. But I was 23 years old. I was like, I have time to negotiate. I have time to talk about this. I haven't signed anything yet. So let me go in. Let me see him face to face and let me see what I can figure out. I'm reading the contract, and it says on it, morning show producer, which is a term to use when you don't want to pay someone a co-host salary. A producer is somebody that sits off to the side and helps with audio and sometimes chimes in if you want that producer on the air. Other radio shows, a producer is in a completely separate booth, just running the board, so to speak, and pressing all of the buttons. I wasn't a producer. I was hired to be a co-host. So when I look at this contract, I'll never forget it. I said, hey, $12 an hour is pretty low. I am going to be a co-host. I'm not a morning show producer. He was so this just started the tune for everything. He was so unbelievably rude to me. He said, you verbally accepted on the phone. You can't change things now. I'm super taken aback. All I want is my dream job that I'm grateful that I'm getting. So I shut my mouth and I signed the paperwork for $12 fucking an hour. I still can't believe I made $12 an hour. It was awful. I mean, it completely like put me into debt for like a couple of years, to be honest. Because no one can live off that wage. You just can't. Especially when you're an adult and you have bills. You can't. So I shut my mouth. I did what I could, and I accepted the job. The issue was, through this entire process of being on this morning show, my co-host was a little bit of an envelope pusher. He did things how he saw fit. I did everything I could to, support him in some of the decisions, but there were a lot of times where I said, hey, you don't really know our boss the way I do. Like, you're coming from out of town. Like, let's probably not do this. I don't think this is a good idea. Maybe we shouldn't say this, XYZ. So it got to the point where our boss basically hated us. I felt like we were bullied every single day. It made it insanely unenjoyable. There were some weeks where he emailed us and said, as soon as you get off air, come into my office. And there were a couple weeks where Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that happened. And then we got yelled at like we were children in fucking kindergarten. And we kept getting yelled at and we kept getting berated. In addition to all of the times we got yelled at and screamed at, we were Our creativity was muted. That's the best way I think to put it. It was muted. So I'll give you a really good example of that. It was just so boring. So we had a topic the one day we were talking about things, and I guess Taylor Swift was in town. And he's like, you guys should have been talking about what people are wearing to the Taylor Swift concert. And I get it. Like, that's what you think we should talk about, but that wasn't the style of my co-host and I. We thought that was really fucking boring radio. We're not going to take callers and be like, what are you wearing tonight? What are you wearing tonight? That's what he wanted to do. So that was constant examples of what we were basically told to talk about on the air. He pushed his agenda onto us, and that is why radio, I think, is getting so damn boring, because it's like, you have someone that is so heavily controlling you and what you can do and say. Unless you're great, I guess you have to be perfect, or here's where the politics come into play. If he doesn't like you, but everybody else does, it doesn't matter. It's based on how he likes you. We had very, very thin walls, very thin walls. So we had a lot of coworkers saying us, holy shit, I heard your whole meeting. He was so rude. He yelled at you. He this, he that. He pushed so many things onto us that was just sucking all the joy out of things. In addition to our boss being a piece of shit, the sales team, when you're in sales, if you're in sales, you get it. Your livelihood is to sell things. Your livelihood is to sell and make money. For some reason, the sales team wouldn't sell our show. They chose not to like us for no reason. So we literally had to do everything we could to kiss ass and get these people to like us. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, my husband is in sales. He just fucking sells and makes money. So why are you telling me I need to force these people to love me when their job is to sell us? Their job is to help us find segments and do things and find people and ideas, but nobody wanted to sell us. So that made it even weirder. It made no sense to me. So there was this really awful, awkward political climate in this whole building that was just shitty. I took this abuse and I call it abuse truly, because I wish I had flies on the wall to really, really express how bad it was. But my co-host said, Jade, I promise you, because he was experienced. He's been doing this for years and years and years prior. He said, I promise you, this is awful. This is not like this anywhere else. This isn't normal. This treatment doesn't make sense to me, and it's awful. I promise this shouldn't be this way. So I was like, that's how I feel. But I'm 23 years old. I get my, again, dream job, but I'm making $12 an hour and getting berated by somebody every day. Berated, literally berated. So I finally reached a point where I was sick going into work. I didn't feel good, super, super anxious, not happy to be there. I didn't want to be there. And I called my co-host and I said, this isn't worth it for me anymore. I could leave today and I could go to a restaurant and make more money being a server. And I won't get treated like shit. And he said, Jade, I fully support it. I hate this too. I'm so sorry that we both are dealing with this. I'm sorry that this is what this job has become. You have to do what's best for you and in your mental health and the health of your life. So I took my key. I went in there. I cleared out my desk at 9:00 at night. I left a resignation note on the door of HR and my boss, and I got the fuck out of there. My co-host called me the next day. He said, you shook the shit out of everybody. He was kind of laughing about it. He got called into my boss's office, and very, very much like my boss, very much him, made sense. Tells my co-host, now you have co-hosts running away from you. It's your fault. So he blamed it on my co-host. And I cannot express enough that he is the reason I stayed. not left. If it wasn't for my co-host, I wouldn't have even probably lasted that long because it wasn't worth it. So this boss of mine that really liked me and supported me and helped teach me turned into that he just hated us. And I think a lot of it was he had a feeling about my co-host. He didn't like the way my co-host was doing things. I tried to reel things in and be like, this is how he likes things done. But I don't like working that way. I don't think that's a healthy work environment. So I left, and I was already starting to think about Joyful Events by Jade before I left. So my original plan was to do wedding planning on the side, just like last week I talked about with Events by Emily. People do this as a hobby as well, and that's how my initial thought was at first when I first launched. I was going to do radio at my peanuts of $12 an hour and do some weddings on the weekends when I could. That was what I was going to do. But deciding to leave completely changed those plans. And what was funny is everyone in that radio building tried to make it seem like, oh, she left to launch her own business. She left to, be a wedding planner. That was an excuse. That wasn't true. That is the furthest reason why I left. My plan was to do both. They benefited from my poorly timing of officially launching my business and leaving. That is the best way to put that. So I launched my business in 2018. My first season of wedding planning was 2019. And here we are in 2024. This is my 6th wedding season in business, and I love working for myself. I worked a couple other jobs before I officially went full-time in wedding planning. So I was wedding planning while also working elsewhere until I got more established to the point where I felt like I could leave. I worked for my husband for a couple of years, Jason. He co-owns his own remodeling business. So I helped do admin work, which was really, really flexible. So I was able to do 1 p.m. site visits with my couples and then also go back to work and do a few things that I needed to do for his company. So it was this really big blessing in disguise that I was able to work for him and myself. So I basically had 2 full-time jobs, kind of working them together in any given day. But I think it's important to kind of express and finally kind of put my story out there as to why radio ended poorly and why I wasn't there longer. And when I look back at things, unfortunately, that place is a rotating door. That radio station keeps getting new and new and new morning shows. For some reason, they can't keep a morning show. Wonder why they can't keep a morning show. I don't think it... I mean, I know it wasn't me. I know I wasn't a big problem. We could have done really great things. Me and my co-host, we were doing great things. And when you get shit on every day, it's not worth it, especially when you're only making $12 an hour. It's especially not worth it. If I was making fucking $80,000 a year, I probably would have put up with it, if I'm being completely honest. But when you're making peanuts, that after taxes, your take-home pay is $25,000 a year, are you gonna deal with someone talking to you like shit all day, every day? No, I don't think you are. I did not leave to start this business. I did not leave because my co-host sucked. I actually loved him. We still talk occasionally to this day. So people at radio shit on podcasts. They don't think they're viable. They don't think they make sense. However, I don't have the FCC telling me what the fuck I can say or what I can't say. I don't have a boss telling me what I can say or what I can't say now. So if you have a dream to start a podcast, do it. Radio is not the dream anymore. Radio, I don't think is. I just don't. Obviously, if you're an established radio personnel and you are seasoned and you have an amazing career, I love that for you. I absolutely love that for you. I don't think radio is worth chasing around the country. There are a lot of people that want to be in radio so bad that they chase and chase and chase, and they move to different markets every so often because they get fired, they get let go, and then they're here. And then they get fired, they get let go, and then they're here because there's budget. There's a lot of budget restraints. So people get cut from the building literally annually. Every single year there were big cuts. So when you heard of a big morning show, for example, sometimes leaving, it wasn't because they decided to retire. It was because they got fired. They got fired because of their budget and they were making too much money that radio can afford because radio can't afford anything. So when I left radio in 2018, I said from that moment, fuck it. I know eventually I'm going to start a podcast. I just need to wait for where the time is right. I didn't know what I wanted my podcast to be. In radio, we talked about different topics all day, every day, but I know podcasts, you kind of need a niche. I'm still kind of on that line of, well, I want to talk about what I want to talk about. So that's why this week's episode, I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to put this out there as to why I actually left, what happened. It doesn't have to always be wedding stuff. I hope I can reach you from a different audience. I hope I can reach you because you used to maybe listen to the morning show. But also my friends in the wedding industry, I hope you want to listen to this too because we're friends and you just want to see what's going on with the cookie table this week. So my goal is for this to be a wedding and a relationship and a life podcast. I want to talk about mainly weddings in our industry and things that are going on. But like last week we talked about with Events by Emily, being a mom and a business owner and what is that like? So this isn't 100% all the time going to be about weddings, but I love you for being a part of this with me. For finally, how many years after conception of knowing I want to do a podcast, finally launching the podcast, it just felt right this year. It just felt right to do this. I looked at my husband and I said, I think it's finally time, babe. I don't know. I really want to start a podcast. And he said, you should. He didn't even hesitate. He looked at me and said, you should, babe. And within 2 weeks, I was already recording my first episode. Got this bad boy printed, had the thoughts in my mind. Let's make it Pittsburgh wedding related, the cookie table, and let's fucking do the damn thing. So to you listening, I love you. I appreciate you. I am grateful for all the friends I've made over the last 6 years of being in business. And I'm grateful for all of you, my couples, for being the reason why I'm in business, because this would be nothing without you. It wouldn't be possible if you didn't trust me to be a part of your wedding day and trust me and my team to be a part of your wedding day. So thank you for everything. And thank you for listening to The Cookie Table.